When Priscilla Presley opened a dusty leather notebook found inside Elvis's old piano bench, she thought it was just another lyric draft. But on the last page, she saw a line written in his unmistakable hand, a message meant only for her. What it said shattered the image of their love she'd carried for decades. Graceland Mansion, August 14, 1982, 9:17 a.m. The morning light spilled through lace curtains, painting soft gold across the white baby grand in the music room. The same piano Elvis had played in the quiet hours when the crowd was gone and only the echo of applause remained. Priscilla hadn't set foot in this room for months. The smell hit her first, that faint mix of sandalwood, dust, and stage sweat that never truly faded from the walls. She was back for a private archival review, helping catalog Elvis's belongings for the museum wing that would soon open. A housekeeper had left a box of polishing cloths on the piano bench. When Priscilla lifted the lid to move them, something rattled underneath. A hollow wooden thud, like a hidden heartbeat. She reached inside and pulled out a thin, weather-warped notebook bound in cracked brown leather. Its spine was stiff, its edges feathered with age. On the first page, written in familiar looping script, were 3 initials, EAP Elvis Aaron Presley. A smile flickered across her face, that instinctive warmth that never fully left her when she saw his handwriting. For a moment she imagined him here again, scribbling lines between takes, humming melodies that no one else would ever hear. But as she turned to the third page, the air changed. Her hands began to tremble. These weren't tidy drafts or show notes. The ink bled unevenly. The handwriting slanted, restless. Lines scratched out, rewritten, abandoned. The words felt raw, desperate, like confessions trapped inside the paper. The stage lights blind me to the faces I miss. The louder they cheer, the smaller I feel. She read in silence, each line heavier than the last. The room seemed to shrink around her. Outside, the cicadas droned against the Memphis heat, their rhythm blending with the faint ticking of the wall clock. For 5 years, she'd lived with the world's image of him. The legend, the icon frozen in sequins. But here was something else entirely. These pages sounded like a man unraveling. Her throat tightened. She traced the blue ink with her fingertip, following the groove where his pen had pressed too hard. He must have written this near the end. After the sleepless nights, the fading energy, the endless tours that blurred one into another. She could almost hear him. Not the performer, but the man behind the music. The one who whispered worries between songs. The one who once told her, "Sometimes the noise keeps me from hearing myself." The realization hit her like a slow-moving wave. This notebook wasn't just part of his work. It was part of his heart. A page near the middle was stuck to another, the ink fused by years of humidity. She hesitated before peeling them apart. The faint smell of paper and time rose up, the scent of something private finally exposed to air. What truth hides in unfinished words? What happens when the person left behind finds a message that was never meant to be found? The grandfather clock in the hallway struck once. The sound echoed through the empty rooms like a cue from another lifetime. Priscilla sat down on the piano bench, notebook in her lap, the ivory keys inches from her hands. She hadn't touched them since he died. Now she pressed one gently. The note rang out clear and lonely. It was the same tone Elvis used to hum when he was thinking, the sound that used to drift through their house late at night, when all the glitter of fame was stripped away. Her eyes returned to the notebook. The pages seemed to breathe. Somewhere inside, she sensed, waited an answer to every question she'd carried for years. But was she ready to read it? She closed the cover slowly, holding it against her chest as if the warmth of her heart could steady the ghosts inside. Outside, the wind stirred the magnolia trees, whispering through the open window. The faintest note from the piano lingered in the air. A secret had waited 5 years for her to come back, and it had just found her. The handwriting on the notebook's final dated page read, July 1977, just weeks before the world lost him. Priscilla turned the fragile paper carefully. The ink had faded to a dull gray, but the rhythm of his thoughts was unmistakable, short bursts, half phrases, like lyrics gasping for breath. Blue curtain. Rest easy, my love. Before the morning comes. Each title looked like a farewell disguised as a song. Joe Esposito once said Elvis had told him, "There's one song I'll never sing in public. It's too close to the bone." Now, sitting there at his piano, Priscilla realized this notebook might hold that very song. She flipped another page. Tucked inside were sketches of chord changes, some drawn in the dark with shaky lines, others pressed deep into the paper like he'd been fighting himself to write. Notes filled the margins. Reminders, thoughts, fragments of pain. Slow tempo, like a prayer. Don't forget to breathe. If they only knew. Then she saw a verse underlined 3 times. I built a palace out of gold, but lost the only home I had. Her pulse quickened. She knew what that meant. He wasn't talking about Graceland. He was talking about her. For a long moment, Priscilla just stared at the line. The air in the room felt heavy, like time itself had stopped to watch her read. The faint creak of the old house echoed like a voice that didn't want to be forgotten. She closed the notebook halfway, fighting the wave of emotion rising in her chest. Then she looked at her reflection in the glossy black lid of the piano. The reflection of the girl she once was. The one who'd believed love could survive anything, even fame. Her throat tightened. Elvis, she whispered under her breath. What were you trying to tell me? That's when she noticed something she had missed. A smudge of darker ink near the corner of the page, where the pen had paused and then started again. The rhythm of that hesitation told her everything. He had stopped mid-thought, maybe crying, maybe doubting, before forcing the words out anyway. I built a palace out of gold, but lost the only home I had. The repetition hit harder the second time. He was confessing, but not to an audience, to himself. In the distance, she could almost hear the faint echo of his final rehearsals in 1977. The slow hum of amplifiers, the murmurs of tired bandmates, Elvis pacing barefoot across the shag carpet of the jungle room, chasing a melody he could never quite catch. Maybe these words were the melody. A tear rolled down her cheek, landing softly on the page. She wiped it quickly, terrified of smudging the ink, terrified of erasing even one more part of him. The notebook trembled in her hands. Every word felt alive, charged with regret. Every silence between lines sounded louder than music. She realized she wasn't just reading a draft. She was reading the emotional autopsy of a man who'd spent his final days writing to the person he couldn't reach anymore. And the cruelest part? She was that person. Her mind spun. Should she keep reading? Or close the book and let the mystery stay buried, where it might be kinder? The decision burned inside her. If she kept going, she might find the truth. But she also might lose the small comfort she'd built believing he'd died at peace. What would you have done if the person you loved left behind a secret that could change everything you thought you knew about them? She took a slow breath, reached for the next page, and turned it. Somewhere in the distance, a floorboard creaked, and the faint echo of a man's humming seemed to drift through the hall. He was still here, in every word he'd left unfinished. The handwriting grew shakier as the notebook moved deeper into that final summer. Each line looked like it had been written through exhaustion. The ink broke in places, like his hand had trembled. Priscilla sat alone in the music room, the ceiling fan clicking softly above her. She imagined the same room 5 years earlier. July 1977, thick Memphis heat pressing through the windows, the sound of distant laughter from the pool. But upstairs, Elvis had been pacing. Jerry Schilling once described it perfectly. He couldn't sleep anymore. He'd walk the halls at 3 a.m., humming half songs into that little tape recorder, like he was afraid silence would swallow him. Priscilla could see it now. The white jumpsuit draped over a chair, the half-empty cup of coffee, the humming that started soft and built until the house itself seemed to breathe with him. He'd sit at the piano, hair damp with sweat, muttering lines, crossing them out, starting again. She turned another page. A small corner of tape still clung to it, the kind used to attach demo notes. And there it was, written sideways in the margin in faint blue pen. Tell her I finally learned what love was. Too late. The room blurred. She blinked hard, trying to steady her breath. Those 8 words changed everything. He had been writing to her, not to the fans, not to the label, to her. For years, she'd wondered if he'd ever truly understood why she had left, why their marriage had cracked under the weight of fame. She had believed the answer died with him. Now, right here in his handwriting was proof he'd found it after all. She pressed her palm over the ink, almost afraid the words would fade beneath her skin. The paper felt fragile, but alive, like a heartbeat under glass. Memories flooded in. The night he collapsed after a Vegas show. The phone calls that always ended with, "Don't worry about me, Scylla. I'm fine." She had known he wasn't. None of them had. She turned to another page. A half-written bridge. "All the lights in the world can't warm a man alone." Below it, scribbled chords, CGAMF, the same progression as "Love Me Tender." He was rewriting his own history through melody. The air inside the room thickened. She could almost hear the faint hum of that handheld recorder again, the click of the button, the hiss of tape rolling. He'd whisper test phrases, "Slow it down, make it hurt less." But the pain never lessened. Every line revealed a man unraveling under the weight of being Elvis Presley. The king to millions, but a lonely soul inside a mansion full of mirrors. And now those mirrors were reflecting on her. Was she part of what broke him, or part of what he was trying to heal? She shut the notebook halfway and stared out the window at the front gates, the iron bars still shaped like musical notes. Fans had gathered even now, pressing flowers through the gaps. They still believed the legend. They never saw the man who wrote lines like these at 4 in the morning. Shaking, scared, and sorry. A sudden gust rattled the piano lid. The noise jolted her back. She realized she'd been holding her breath for almost a minute. Her mind spun with a dangerous thought. Should she release these lyrics? Should the world see the truth behind the glitter? If she did, people would call them fake, say it was publicity. If she didn't, this honesty would die again, buried twice. The moral weight of that choice pressed down on her. She looked back at the verse. "Tell her I finally learned what love was." Too late. The ink had bled slightly, as if even the paper had cried with him. For 5 long minutes, she sat still, hearing only the ticking clock and the faint buzz of the amplifier that hadn't been turned on since 1977. Somewhere in those sounds, she imagined his voice whispering, "Sing it for me, Scylla." Her hand shook as she closed the notebook. The cover made a soft thud, like a heartbeat fading into silence. She wasn't ready to face what waited beyond that page, but she knew she couldn't hide from it forever. He had left his truth in ink, and now she was the only one alive who could decide what the world would do with it. The next page was heavier than the rest. The paper felt thicker, like it had been folded and unfolded many times before it was tucked inside. A faint pencil mark along the edge caught the light. In small, uneven letters he had written, "Do not finish." Priscilla hesitated. Every part of her wanted to obey that request, but curiosity, no love, overpowered fear. She unfolded the page. Inside was a single verse. Short, incomplete, but devastating. "If someday she finds these lines, tell her I stayed, in every song I couldn't write." Her hands froze. The air left her chest. The handwriting was unmistakable. His looping letters, the long tail on the Y, the soft pressure at the end of each line. Then, below the verse, barely visible in fading pencil, another line. "Scylla, forgive me for making the music louder than our love." That was it. No signature. Just that single sentence that crushed everything she tried to forget. She pressed her hand to her mouth, trying not to cry. But the tears came anyway, hot and silent, dropping onto the paper like raindrops over old ink. The entire world had mourned Elvis Presley. The legend, the voice, the showman. But in this moment, sitting on the piano bench with the note trembling in her hands, Priscilla was mourning the man. The one who laughed between takes, who sang gospel in the kitchen, who whispered that fame was a cage disguised as heaven. And here, at last, was proof that he'd known it too. Her body shook as she whispered, "You stayed, but you were gone long before you left." The words barely made a sound. Outside, thunder rolled across the Memphis sky, shaking the window pane. The first drops of rain hit the glass like soft taps from another world. She stared at the words again. Forgive me for making the music louder than our love. It was the apology she had needed but never received. The confession no crowd had ever heard. Her breath trembled. She traced each letter slowly with her fingertip, as if touching his voice through the paper. The pencil marks were faint, but still there, still fighting time. The room felt alive. The air seemed to hum faintly, the same low vibration that filled Graceland whenever he rehearsed. She could almost hear him, his voice behind her, soft, regretful, whispering through the rain. If someday she finds these lines. Her heart pounded. He had written it for this moment. He had known she would find it. Maybe not soon, but someday. Every breath she took felt like breathing in the ghost of their love. She wanted to be angry, to scream that it was too late. But how could she? He'd already said everything she ever wanted him to say. He'd already bled his truth onto this single torn page. The clock in the hallway ticked louder. The storm grew heavier. For a moment, she thought she saw the reflection of movement on the piano lid, like the shimmer of a stage light. She blinked. Nothing. Just her and the words that refused to fade. She whispered, "I forgive you." The words filled the quiet like a song. Something inside her cracked open. The grief that had lived in silence for 5 years finally began to shift. Not vanish, but soften. The kind of peace that doesn't erase pain, but makes it bearable. Still, one thought burned inside her. What if this verse wasn't the end? What if there was more hidden in the notebook? Something he never wanted the world to see. She turned the page. Nothing but blank paper. Yet faint indentations showed where he had started to write another line, then stopped. The ghost of the pencil marks formed half a word that looked like always. That unfinished word felt heavier than any song he ever sang. She closed the notebook carefully, clutching it to her chest. The storm outside quieted to a drizzle. The light through the window shifted, painting the room in silver. One line, one message, one heartbreak frozen in ink. She exhaled shakily, whispering, "You did finish it, Elvis. You just didn't know how." For a long time, she stayed there, listening to the soft tapping of rain against the glass. The sound blended with her heartbeat until they became one. That was the night she stopped hearing the music as noise. From then on, every song he'd ever sung felt like a letter addressed to her. Days passed before Priscilla dared to open the notebook again. But once she did, she couldn't stop. Each unread line felt like a breath left behind, something that still wanted to be heard. One lyric kept echoing in her mind. "Before the morning comes." It was barely half a song, just a chorus and a verse. But the melody written in the margin looked familiar. She could almost hear it in his voice, the soft drawl, the way he'd hum before finding the next note. Priscilla called Jerry Schilling, one of the few people who had lived both the glory and the grief. When he heard the title, he went quiet. "I remember that one," he said softly. Billy Strange recorded a demo. Elvis never finished the vocals. He said it was too personal. 2 days later, Priscilla, Jerry, and Billy met inside RCA Studio B in Nashville, the same place where Love Me Tender and Suspicious Minds were born. The air smelled of wood polish and magnetic tape, the walls lined with silent instruments waiting to speak again. Billy set an old reel-to-reel on the machine. The tape hissed as it spun, and then Elvis's voice. Faint, rough, beautiful. He sang the first few bars of Before the Morning Comes, his tone fragile yet full of hope. "If I don't make it through the night, don't cry when the morning comes." Then the track cut off. Silence. Priscilla pressed her hand to her chest. She could feel her heartbeat racing in time with the tape's soft crackle. It was the first new sound of him she'd heard in years. Jerry wiped his eyes. "He wanted to record this the week before he died," he whispered. "He said it was the only one that scared him." Priscilla looked down at the notebook, open on the table beside the machine. The unfinished lines glowed faintly in the studio light. "What if we finish it?" she said quietly. "Not as a release, just as goodbye." Billy Strange nodded. Then let's do it the way he would have wanted, simple, real. The room filled with the gentle thump of drums, the heartbeat of bass, the slow sweep of a steel guitar. Billy replayed the vocal track, syncing it with live instruments as Jerry adjusted levels. Priscilla stood in the center of the room, eyes closed. For a moment, she felt him there. Every chord felt like a memory, every pause like a breath between two souls that never stopped talking. When the final note played, Billy let the tape spin until it clicked to a stop. The room stayed silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Then Billy pressed playback. Elvis's voice filled the studio again. Clearer now, surrounded by music he never got to hear. The chorus swelled, gentle but unstoppable, as if he were singing straight to her. Don't cry, my love. I'm still the voice behind your dreams. Priscilla's knees nearly gave out. She gripped the edge of the console, tears sliding down her face. She whispered, "He finished it after all."
Jy ry reachet oor internet dovente volume letting te final notelinger. Tes, his side softly isn't just a song. It's him saying goodbye. Te played it again. And again. Jach time te misith he differently less pain more piase. Wente session ended, Priscilla plate te notebook bak inside its later kover. He left his verboten of is, se side, her foite stiaden of. Not just me everhouene woe verloof het hem. Billy rewound te tape and handed her te smal spoel. Keep it safe, he said. This isn't a record. It's a heartbeat. Dat negit se returnet to Grassland. The house was dark, kayet at shipped for the crickets outside. Se karite real upstairs to the misith room, set het gentlei on the piano, and presit play one last time. Elvis foite floate trouge te hals, atjong of the wal staat had onze held his lachter. It didn't sound like a man ding. It sounded like a man finale free. Se wesperet, ou chame bak to finesse huisong. Antwoord de first time in eiers se smelet. But Jose voorgevene santrafal trouge missies. And so met times, de persoon we loost vindt stijr wij home, not trouge miracles, bid trouge melodie. De wereld never jaart dat final recording. Priscilla never sold it, never released it se kept it in a velvet linet box inside de Grasslands private archieve, alongside te later notebook, te folded, do not finesse, page, and te real labelet in his handwriting, before it te morning komis. Raugevoekel, jylle 77. Onlei a handvol of piople verjaard het plaait. Bid word spread aan hy wei. Wijspers trouge te van slips. A journalists rumor about our lost Elvis apology song. It became a part of the quiet legend that surrounded his final days, half memory, half miracle. In 1995, a small brass plaatje was plotted in the missive room, just beneath the piano where the notebook was found. The inscription was simple in memory of the words never sing, and te loof dat stil etjusere. Visitors wo walk trouge Grassland rarelei notice it at first. Bidtose wo stop of den sy te sameting, dat the room feels different. Warmer somof. As if that itself carries a him, the ghost of a melodie that refuses to fade. Songwriters began to study his lyrics more closely after that. They found neef depte in the later songs, lines about loneliness, feite, and voorgevenes that had been overlooked when everhouene was chasing the glitter of the eerlijheids. One as a fille producer chalatem te triest lyrics verwrote. Atedemus wrote essays about that shift, about of the man who onze embodied fame had been trying to write his way back to by man. Bid none of them kneef that his triest line had never been sing. Priscilla never corrected the remorse. Ze didn't need to se kneef te trittele vet were it belonged in silence. Onze navele on quiet mornings, se wild sit by dat same piano, plate haar vingers on te kies, and press one note. The sound wild hang in te eerlijke a heartbeat. Ze zei het maade haar veel like was listening. Van stil lieve letters at the Grassland gates. So me talk about love lost and found. Others about songs that he let them. Manai mention as story passet from one van toe anotter, dat somewere in dat hause, as song exist staat was nevermeant to bejaard by ane bit one woman. Dat story bekame part of the mythos of Elvis Presley, te idea dat his greatest work wasn't as song bit an apologie hidden in one. Eers later went de Grappling archives weer digitale restored, te curator found an envelope tape to the back of the notebook. Inside, as single Polaroid, Priscilla and Elvis sitting at that same piano, smiling at something in scene. On the back had written in blue ink, "Don't forget, Mrs. Liffes weer loven never dies." The foto was platted in aframe beside te plaaie. No spotlig het no explanation. Just kyk proef dat te liggend had a hartbeat. When visitors pause in that room, they often fall silent. It's not all what I feel, it's piase. As if the house itself has finale a chalet. Some say dat weer Elvis spirit lingers most strongly, not on te stage, not in te liggets, bid here, in te missies he never finis het. My betere rigit. My besongs don die wentere left incomplete. My bet hy weit voor de persoon te weer written voor. And when dat persoon voorgevees, de song finale eens. In te eind, te notebook was never about fame, fortune, or te crofts dat onze skria met his name. It was about loven, in finisset, in spoken, bit real. Priscilla onze told a journalist in a quiet interview, people ask if he ever stop het loving him. Te trette is, he kept talking. He just didn't hear it until a years later. Dat single sentence betame haar piase. Sy understood nog dat loven duizend van isse wen somione liafes. Het change sape. Het hides in memories, in melodies, in words written on apage dat time voor God. Elvis final message wasn't a goed bije, het was a promise. Tate was stiltere in every song, in every kite note, in every jaar dat stil belief het in hem. Priscilla never married. Sy didn't have to the kind of journalistion thuis haar het kilden bereplated, it felt only remember it. Jach time se walk het past dat piano, sy pres onekie and listen to it vader. And every time sis melet trouw getiaars. Bechouse sometimes the loudest confessions don't come from a stage or a microphone. They come from the pages we weer never meant to open. They come from the silence dat finale tells te trette. The later notebook still sits in Grappling archive today. The ink has faded, bid the message in dieres, forgive me for making the music louder than our loven. Visitors who see it don't just see words, they feel them. And that's the lega they left behind, proof that even liggends kan behiman, and even broken hearts can still make something beautiful. Loven didn't end with his last performance. It found a neefsel. Even liggends liave in finis het lyres. And sometimes te triest ones are written to late to besing. Bid my betats the secret of loven, it never really stops playing. It just waits for somione brave en ouge to listen. So if ouwe ever lost somione who left things inside, listen closely. The song isn't over uit. If this story of loven regret, and rhythm tune touch it ou, sare it with the somione who still holding on to an infinite het goed bije. Bechouse some weer, tye song mig het stil op bewaiting to bejaard.